My name is Audrey, and I was born into what you might call a typical middle-class family. My father was an entrepreneur, always busy with his business, while my mother ruled our home with an iron fist. I had an older sister who seemed to be the perfect daughter in my mother's eyes. From a young age, I learned that in our house, what Mom said was law. Whatever Lisa did, I had to do too. Whatever Mom decided, that was final. Dad would sometimes try to intervene, but he was rarely home, and when he was, Mom always found a way to get her way. As I grew older, the control only tightened. Every decision, from what clothes I wore to what friends I could have, seemed to be made for me. Lisa, meanwhile, flourished under Mom's guidance. She was the golden child, always doing exactly what was expected of her. When Lisa was in her final year of high school, she started dating Richard, the son of a local business tycoon. Mom was over the moon. Did you see how he looked at her? Mom gushed after their first dinner together. Mark my words, we'll be planning a wedding before you know it. I rolled my eyes, but kept quiet. I was in my sophomore year, and I'd learned by now that disagreeing with Mom only led to arguments I couldn't win. Sure enough, Lisa and Richard's relationship progressed quickly. By the time I was a senior, they were engaged, and Mom couldn't have been happier. Now, Audrey, she said one evening, her eyes gleaming with a look I'd come to dread, we need to start thinking about your future too. Lisa's done so well for herself, and you're such a pretty girl. I'm sure we can find you a nice young man from a good family. I felt my stomach twist. Mom, I'm not even out of high school yet. Can't I focus on college first? She waved her hand dismissively. College is important, of course, but so is securing your future. You know, Richard has a cousin who's just a few years older than you. He helps run the family business. I think you two would hit it off splendidly. And just like that, my fate was being decided for me. Again. I looked to Dad for help, but he just gave me a weak smile and retreated to his study. I was on my own, as usual. Just as Mom had orchestrated, I found myself on a date with Richard's cousin, James. He was handsome, I'll give him that, but from the moment we met, something felt off. So, Audrey, James said, leaning back in his chair at the upscale restaurant he'd chosen, I hear you're headed to college soon. Any thoughts on what you'll study? I opened my mouth to answer, but he cut me off. Business, right? It's the smart choice. You'll need to understand how things work when you're part of our family. I blinked, taken aback. Actually, I was thinking about. Trust me, he interrupted again. Business is the way to go. I'll talk to the admissions office at my alma mater. They owe me a favor. And that's how it went. James talked, I listened, and any attempt I made to voice my own opinions was swiftly overridden. By the end of the night, I felt suffocated. Despite my reservations, Mom and Lisa were ecstatic. He's perfect for you, Lisa squealed when I got home. Did you see his watch? That alone probably cost more than Dad makes in a month. I forced a smile, not wanting to burst their bubble. But as the weeks went by and James and I continued to date, I felt increasingly uncomfortable. He was always telling me what to do, what to wear, how to act. It was like having another mother, only worse. One evening, after a particularly stifling date where James had planned our next 3 outings without even asking me, I'd had enough. I called him the next day. James, I think we need to talk, I said, my heart pounding. Sure, babe. What's up? His cavalier tone grated on my nerves. I took a deep breath. I don't think this is working out. You're a great guy, but... Whoa, hold on, he cut in. Is this because I ordered for you last night? I told you, I know what's best. You'll learn to appreciate it. No, James. It's not just that. I don't think we're compatible. I want to break up. There was a long pause. When he spoke again, his voice was cold. You're making a mistake, Audrey. You won't find better than me. Think about your family, about your future. Don't be stupid. I hung up, my hands shaking. I'd done it. I'd broken free. But my relief was short-lived. The moment Mom found out, all hell broke loose. "What were you thinking?" she screeched. "James is perfect for you. Do you want to end up alone? Do you want to shame this family like that?" I stood my ground, but the pressure was immense. Day after day, Mom and Lisa tag-teamed me, wearing down my resolve. They'd arrange accidental meetings with James, leaving us alone together when he'd stop by to see Mom. The constant barrage was exhausting. Each day, I felt my resolve weakening. Finally, worn down by the relentless pressure, I gave up. "Fine," I told Mom, my voice hollow. "I'll give James another chance." The look of triumph on her face made my stomach turn, but I was too tired to fight anymore. I began to accept James's courtship again, going through the motions of the relationship they all wanted from me. Mom and Lisa were overjoyed. In the evenings, I'd overhear them excitedly planning for the future, discussing how they would manage the brothers' company once James and I were married. They dreamed aloud about all the money and the entire business that would become available to them. As if controlling my love life wasn't enough, Lisa took it upon herself to plan my entire career. One evening, she burst into my room, her eyes gleaming with excitement. "Audrey, I've got it all figured out," she exclaimed. "There's a perfect position for you in Richard and James' company. You'll be the head of PR. That's why you're going to Hillside Business College. I've already picked out your classes." My protests fell on deaf ears. Before I knew it, I was enrolled in Hillside, studying subjects I had zero interest in. Each day was a struggle, and I felt my spirit dying a little more with every class. After a particularly grueling week, I couldn't take it anymore. I called Dad, telling him everything. To my surprise and relief, he listened. "Audrey," he said finally, "this is your life. If you're not happy, then it's time for a change. I'll support you, whatever you decide." With Dad's blessing and financial support, I made my escape. I applied to a college in another city, one that offered programs I was genuinely interested in. When I got accepted, I packed my bags and left without looking back. Once I was settled in my new city, I knew there was one more thing I had to do. With trembling hands, I wrote a message to James. "James, I'm sorry, but I can't do this anymore. I don't love you, and I don't want to see you again. Please respect my decision." I hit send, hoping he'd understand. His reply came quickly, and my heart sank as I read it. "Audrey, you're not thinking straight. I'm going to talk to your mother and Lisa. They'll knock some sense into you. You're not going anywhere, babe. We're meant to be together." I felt sick. Even miles away, they were trying to control me. Months passed, and I thrived in my new environment. I made friends, excelled in my classes, and for the first time in years, I felt like myself. Then, at a graduation party for a friend, I met him. Tom, the brother of one of the graduates. He was kind, funny, and most importantly, he listened when I spoke. We started dating, and I fell hard. This wasn't the manufactured affection I'd felt for James. This was real, all-consuming love. When Tom proposed a year later, I didn't hesitate to say yes. With shaking hands, I dialed my parents' number. "Mom, Dad," I said when they picked up, "I'm coming home for a visit. And, I'm bringing my fiancé." The silence on the other end was deafening. When we arrived at my parents' house, Dad greeted us warmly, genuine happiness shining in his eyes. Mom and Lisa, however, were cold and aloof. At dinner, the interrogation began. "So, Tom," Mom said, her voice sickly sweet, "what position do you hold in your company?" Tom looked confused. "Oh, I'm just starting out. Entry-level marketing associate." I saw the disappointment flash in Mom's eyes. Lisa jumped in. "And what about your family's business?" "We don't have a family business," Tom replied honestly. "My parents are teachers." The temperature in the room seemed to drop several degrees. Mom's smile became forced. "Audrey, dear, can I speak to you in the kitchen?" In the kitchen, Mom's facade cracked. "Are you insane?" she hissed. "You had James. A successful, wealthy man who could provide for you. And you choose this?" Before I could respond, the front door opened. To my horror, James walked in, as if he owned the place. He strode over to me, throwing an arm around my shoulders. "Hey babe, miss me?" Tom stood up, his face flushed with anger. He ordered James to get away from me. Mom turned to him, her voice ice cold. "You arrogant, ill-mannered boy. How dare you come into our home and try to steal our daughter? Get out, now." I'd had enough. I shrugged off James' arm and took Tom's hand. "We're leaving," I announced, my voice steady despite the chaos around me. As we walked out, I could hear Mom, Lisa, and James shouting after us. But for once, I didn't care. I was choosing my own path, with someone who truly loved me for who I was. Despite the drama with my family, Tom and I went ahead with our wedding plans. The day finally arrived, and it was beautiful, almost perfect. The only shadow on our happiness was the conspicuous absence of my mother and sister. During the reception, I couldn't escape the concerned looks and whispered questions from relatives. I could see the confusion and concern on the faces of Tom's family. How could I explain that my own mother and sister had chosen not to come because they disapproved of the man I loved? After the wedding, Tom and I settled into his apartment, ready to start our new life together. For the most part, things were wonderful. We were happy, in love, and excited about our future. But there was one recurring nightmare: family holidays at my parents' house. The first Thanksgiving after our wedding, we decided to attend, hoping for reconciliation. Big mistake. As we walked in, I froze. There, sitting at the dining table like he belonged, was James. "Audrey," Mom exclaimed, her voice sickly sweet. "Look who decided to join us. Isn't it nice of James to come?" I saw Tom's jaw clench, but he remained silent. As we were cleaning up, James cornered me in the kitchen. "Hey, Audrey," he said, leaning in close. "Can we talk privately, for old time's sake?" Before I could respond, Tom appeared, his face thunderous. He grabbed James by the shirt, pushing him back. "Stay away from my wife," he growled. Mom burst in, her face red with anger. "How dare you," she shrieked at Tom. "Get out of my house, you brute." We left, and I thought that would be the end of it. But every holiday, every family gathering, the same scene played out. James would be there, Mom would fawn over him, and Tom and I would leave feeling hurt and angry. The final straw came when I saw the social media posts. Mom and Lisa had shared childhood photos of me, pictures of James and me together, all with captions about how I had abandoned the family, how Tom was tearing the family apart. That night, I sat down at my computer and began to type. I poured out everything: the years of manipulation, the pressure to be with James, the constant undermining of my choices. I described how they had tried to control every aspect of my life, from my career to my love life. I explained why Tom and I had stopped coming to family events, detailing the uncomfortable situations we'd been put in. The response was overwhelming. Comments flooded in from relatives and friends, many expressing shock at what I'd been through and offering support. The tide of family opinion had turned. Where once there had been judgment, now there was understanding. Where there had been sympathy for Mom and Lisa, now there was criticism of their controlling behavior. After my big post online, I stopped talking to my mom and sister. I did talk to my dad, though, and he was really supportive. This made my mom really angry. She yelled at Dad, trying to get him to make me divorce Tom and marry James instead. Dad had always done what Mom wanted, but this time was different. He'd had enough. He shouted back at her and even gave her divorce papers. They split up, and Dad let Mom keep the house so he wouldn't have to pay her money every month. He moved out with just one suitcase. He had some savings, so he rented a place near me and Tom. Mom and Lisa, predictably, didn't take this well. Their social media accounts exploded with posts accusing me of turning Dad against Mom, of destroying our family. The psychological pressure was relentless. Unable to bear it any longer, I blocked their accounts and made my own profiles private. As I clicked the confirm button, I felt a wave of nausea wash over me. At first, I thought it was just stress, but as the feeling persisted, a different possibility crossed my mind. A quick trip to the pharmacy and an anxious wait later, my suspicion was confirmed: I was pregnant. Joy and fear warred within me. Would this news finally make Mom and Lisa back off? My hope was short-lived. Somehow, Mom found out about my pregnancy, probably through one of the relatives I hadn't blocked. But instead of reaching out with congratulations or reconciliation, she started a vicious rumor campaign. "Did you hear?" my cousin texted me. "Your mom is telling everyone the baby is James's. She says you've been sneaking around behind Tom's back." I stared at the message in disbelief, my hand instinctively moving to my still flat stomach. How could she stoop so low? The stress was becoming unbearable. Tom found me crying on the couch that evening. Without a word, he wrapped me in his arms, letting me sob into his shirt. When I finally calmed down, he gently lifted my chin, his eyes full of love and concern. "This has to stop," he said softly. "You need a break from all this drama. How about a vacation? Just you, somewhere peaceful, to relax and focus on yourself and our baby." The idea was tempting, but I hesitated. "I can't just leave you to deal with all this." He smiled, shaking his head. "I'll be fine. You and the little one are my priority. Let me take care of you." Before I knew it, Tom had booked me a week-long stay at a serene country resort. As I packed my bags, I felt a glimmer of hope. A week away from all the chaos, a chance to breathe and center myself, it sounded like heaven. For the first few days of my vacation, I finally found the peace I'd been craving. The country resort was beautiful, with its lush forests and serene lakes. I spent my time reading, taking gentle walks, and just breathing in the fresh air. It felt like I could finally relax. But on the third day, my tranquility was shattered. As I walked into the resort's dining area, I froze. There, at a nearby table, were Lisa, her husband Richard, and James. My heart sank. This couldn't be a coincidence. Lisa spotted me and waved enthusiastically, as if we were the best of friends. "Audrey, what a surprise. Come join us." I shook my head. "Please, just leave me alone. I'm here to rest." But Lisa wouldn't take no for an answer. For the next 2 days, she kept showing up wherever I went. She'd sit at my table with Richard and James, chatting and laughing as if everything was normal. She was constantly taking selfies of the four of us, posting them online with captions like "family reunion" and "so great to reconnect." I felt sick. I knew what she was doing, trying to create a false narrative, to make it look like I was happily spending time with James. She wanted to cause problems between me and Tom. I texted my husband about what's going on here. By the 5th day, I couldn't take it anymore. I decided to cut my trip short and go home. As I was leaving my room with my suitcase, Lisa appeared at the top of the stairs. "Audrey, wait," she called out. "You can't leave. James is ready to forgive you. He says he'll even adopt your baby. He still wants to marry you." I felt a wave of nausea that had nothing to do with my pregnancy. "I'm not feeling well, Lisa. Please, just leave me alone." I turned to go down the stairs, but Lisa grabbed my arm. "You're such a fool," she hissed. "Can't you see what's best for you?" "Let go of me," I shouted, trying to pull away. She released my arm, but the sudden movement threw me off balance. I felt myself falling, tumbling down the stairs. The world spun around me, and then everything went black. When I came to, I was at the bottom of the stairs. Tom was leaning over me, his face pale with worry. How had he gotten here? The pain in my abdomen was excruciating. The next few hours passed in a blur of ambulance sirens, hospital corridors, and doctors' concerned faces. Despite their best efforts, it was too late. I had lost the baby. As I lay in the hospital bed, Tom holding my hand, the full weight of what had happened crashed over me. The vacation that was supposed to be my escape had turned into a nightmare. My sister's relentless pursuit of her own agenda had cost me my child. In the aftermath of the tragedy, my grief turned to rage. The loss of my child was not just a terrible accident, it was the result of Lisa's reckless and manipulative behavior. With Tom's support, I decided to take legal action against my sister. The court case was grueling, but justice was on my side. Several resort guests had witnessed Lisa's confrontation with me on the stairs. Their testimonies, along with security camera footage, provided irrefutable evidence of her dangerous actions. The judge ruled in my favor, awarding me $10,000 in compensation. When news of the lawsuit reached my mother, her reaction was swift and harsh. She called me, her voice cold and cutting. "You've gone too far this time, Audrey," she spat. "Suing your own sister? You're no longer my daughter." The line went dead, and with it, the last thread connecting me to my mother snapped. Despite the finality of it, I felt a strange sense of relief. Tom and I decided it was time for a fresh start. We sold our apartment and bought a new house with a mortgage. We were careful to keep our new address a secret from my mother and sister. Only Dad knew where we lived now, and he promised to keep it to himself. The move was just the beginning of our healing process. I started seeing a psychologist, working through the trauma of losing our child and the years of family manipulation. Slowly but surely, I began to feel like myself again. As months passed, our life settled into a peaceful rhythm. Then, one morning, I discovered I was pregnant again. Joy mingled with fear as I shared the news with Tom. "We'll keep it between us for now," he said, holding me close. "No one else needs to know until you're ready." We guarded our secret carefully, telling no one, not even my dad. I was extra cautious, following every bit of advice from my doctor. As my belly grew, we finally shared the news with Dad, swearing him to secrecy. The pregnancy progressed without complications, each week bringing a mixture of anticipation and anxiety. Finally, after what felt like the longest 9 months of my life, our daughter was born, a healthy, beautiful baby girl. Life had settled into a beautiful rhythm. Our daughter, Lily, was now 6 months old, filling our days with joy and laughter. Tom and I had found our groove as parents, and with each passing day, the pain of our past faded a little more. One afternoon, as I was putting Lily down for her nap, my phone rang. The number was unfamiliar, but something made me answer it. "Hello?" I said cautiously. "Audrey, it's your mother." I nearly dropped the phone in shock. Before I could respond, she continued, her voice uncharacteristically meek. "Your sister is here too. We need your help." As they explained their situation, I felt a mix of emotions, pity, anger, and a strange sense of vindication. Lisa's husband had gone bankrupt, and she had left him. They were in dire financial straits. "We need you to talk to your father," Mom said. "Convince him to help us out. And, we need you to return the compensation money from the lawsuit." I took a deep breath, steeling myself. "I'm sorry, but I can't do that. Dad makes his own decisions, and that money was awarded by the court. Please don't contact me again." Just then, Lily started crying in the next room. Mom's voice sharpened. "Is that a baby? Audrey, do you have a child?" I closed my eyes, cursing the timing. "Yes, I have a daughter." "A granddaughter?" Mom's voice rose. "How dare you keep this from me? I demand to see her." "You can't keep my grandchild from me." Her shouting woke Lily fully, and her cries grew louder. I felt my own anger rising. "You lost any right to be in my child's life when you disowned me," I said, my voice cold. "If you or Lisa try to contact us again, I'll file for a restraining order. Goodbye." I hung up and immediately blocked the number, my hands shaking. Tom came in, carrying a fussing Lily. "Who was that?" he asked, concern etched on his face. "My mother and sister," I said, taking Lily into my arms. "They're having money troubles and wanted help." I said no. Tom nodded, pulling us both into a hug. You did the right thing, he said softly. Later that week, I called Dad to warn him about Mom and Lisa's situation. He sighed heavily. I know, sweetheart. They tried to contact me too, he said. I've heard through the grapevine that they've been evicted from their home. They're living in a pretty rough area now. I felt a twinge of sadness, quickly replaced by resolve. They made their choices, Dad. We can't let them drag us back into their drama. You're right, he agreed. How's my little princess doing? As I updated him on Lily's latest milestones, I felt a wave of gratitude. Despite everything, I had this, a loving husband, a beautiful daughter, and a father who stood by me. We had built a life filled with love and respect, far from the manipulation and drama of my past.
Hi, I'm Jennifer, a 38-year-old single mother dedicated to my 10-year-old son John. It was a typical sunny afternoon, and John was out riding his bike just a couple of blocks from our house. The neighborhood was quiet, the kind of place where you'd never expect disaster to strike. Be back by dinner and be careful, I had called out as he sped off, helmet securely on, his face lit up with a big grin. An hour later, I was in the kitchen when my phone rang. The number was unfamiliar. Is this Jennifer? Your son's been in an accident, the voice on the other end said, panic clear in their tone. My heart plummeted. Grabbing my keys, I bolted out the door. When I arrived at the scene, chaos unfolded before me. Ambulance sirens wailing, neighbors gathered in shock, and there, in the middle of it all, was John, lying on the ground, clearly in pain. I rushed to his side, barely aware of the police trying to control the scene. A paramedic was tending to him. He's got multiple injuries. We need to get him to the hospital right away, they said as they loaded him into the ambulance. It was then that I noticed my father's car nearby, its front bumper crumpled. My stomach twisted, a mix of fear and fury rising within me. At the hospital, the full scope of John's injuries was revealed. Multiple fractures and a traumatic brain injury. As the doctors prepared him for surgery, my father, John, appeared, disheveled, reeking of alcohol. It was just an accident, Jennifer. I didn't see him. He came out of nowhere, he mumbled, his voice shaky. Just an accident. You were drinking and driving, and you hit your own grandson, I snapped, my voice trembling with anger. Jennifer, you know how the police blow things out of proportion. We can sort this out as a family. No need to get the law involved, he whispered urgently. I glared at him, my voice rising. Sort this out. John could have died because of your recklessness. I'm not covering this up, I'm pressing charges. His expression hardened. You do that, and you're no daughter of mine. He stormed off, leaving me to face the harsh reality of my decision. Pressing charges would mean tearing our family apart. But as I watched my son being wheeled into surgery, I knew I had no other choice. His safety, his life, meant more than any family loyalty. Mom, it's going to be okay, John whispered weakly, trying to offer me a brave smile as they took him away. I squeezed his hand. I know, honey. I'm here, and I'm going to make sure of it. The fallout was immediate. My phone buzzed nonstop with calls and texts from family members urging me to reconsider. Family comes first, Jennifer. He's your father, my aunt pleaded over the phone. He nearly killed John, I shot back, my resolve hardening with every conversation. My mother, Martha, arrived at my door, her eyes red with a mix of anger and desperation. How could you do this to us? To your father, she demanded. He did this to himself, Mom, and to John. I'm protecting my son. That's what a mother does, I replied, my voice firm. He's disowning you, rewriting his will as we speak. Is it worth it, losing your family? She asked, her voice trembling. If it means justice for John, yes, it's worth it, I said, standing my ground, though her words stung. As my family turned their backs on me, I found unexpected support in my neighbor Linda. She became my pillar, bringing meals, sitting with me late into the night, listening to my worries. You're doing the right thing, Jennifer. It's not easy, but it's right, she reassured me as we watched the sunset one evening. I just wish it didn't cost so much, I admitted, feeling the weight of my family's estrangement. Some costs are necessary. You're teaching John to stand up for what's right. That's priceless, Linda said with a comforting smile. Days turned into weeks, and the tension only grew. My father made one last attempt to change my mind, calling me with a cold, distant voice. "Last chance, Jennifer. Drop the charges or you're out of the will. Think of your future." "My son's future is my only concern," I replied firmly. "Do what you have to, Dad. I've made my choice." As I hung up, I felt a strange mix of liberation and loss. I was free from his manipulation, but at the cost of my family ties. It was a high price, but looking at John, slowly getting better each day, I knew I had made the right choice. With Linda's help, the community rallied around us, organizing support for John's medical bills and offering the emotional comfort my family no longer provided. Her kindness reminded me that family isn't always defined by blood, but by the bonds we choose to nurture and the people who stand by us when life gets hard. As the legal proceedings against my father unfolded, each session in the courtroom felt like a battle. His lawyer painted him as a regretful grandfather who made one unfortunate mistake. "It was an accident, a tragic lapse in judgment," the lawyer argued. But I stood my ground, my voice unwavering. He chose to drink and drive. That decision almost cost my son his life. It's not just a mistake, it's a crime. The tension in the courtroom was palpable. The prosecutor, a stern-faced woman with a reputation for being tough, methodically laid out the evidence: traffic camera footage, witness testimonies, and John's medical reports. Reliving the accident through each presentation was painful, but it was necessary. Outside the courtroom, public opinion was divided. On social media, some people supported my decision to hold my father accountable, while others accused me of tearing our family apart. "He's family, you should have handled this privately," read one comment. Another countered, "Justice has no familial boundaries. She's brave for standing up." Meanwhile, John's recovery was a slow, grueling process. Every small step forward in physical therapy was a victory, and his resilience became my beacon. Watching him struggle yet persist gave me strength I didn't know I had. "You're getting stronger every day, John," I encouraged during one of his therapy sessions as he grimaced through the pain, determined. "I want to get better, Mom, so we can ride bikes again," he said with a brave smile. One day, after an exhausting court session, I came home to find him trying to walk without his crutches. My heart leaped with both fear and pride. "Careful, John," I called out. "I can do it, Mom, look." His smile as he took those tentative steps made all the turmoil worth it. Our story caught the attention of a local news reporter who requested an interview. Reluctant but realizing it might help sway public opinion, I agreed. "Why go public with this? Why not forgive and move on?" The reporter asked during the interview. "This isn't about forgiveness. It's about accountability and protecting others from the same pain," I explained, hoping my words would resonate with those still on the fence. As the trial neared its end, the weight of the potential outcomes hung heavily over me. But regardless of the verdict, I knew I had done everything possible for John. This fight in court wasn't just about legal justice, it was about affirming our values, about showing John that standing up for what's right is the only way to live, no matter the personal cost. "I'm proud of you, Mom," John whispered one night as I tucked him in. His words echoed in the quiet room, filling me with a deep sense of pride. His simple, honest words fortified me. No matter what the verdict, we had already won the more significant battle. We had held onto our integrity, our bond. Those were victories no verdict could ever take away. The final day of the trial arrived with a heavy air. The courtroom was packed, the tension almost unbearable as we waited for the judge's decision. Despite the overwhelming evidence we presented, the defense had exploited every legal loophole, casting doubt wherever they could. The evidence presented is circumstantial at best. My client deeply regrets his actions, but this was an accident, not a deliberate act of harm, my father's lawyer concluded, giving a confident nod to the judge. As the judge began to speak, my heart pounded so loudly I could barely hear his words. While there is no doubt that Mr. J's actions were reckless, the burden of proof for intent has not been sufficiently met. His words stung like a physical blow. "Not guilty." The gavel fell, its sound shattering my hopes for legal justice. My father, looking relieved but not happy, avoided my gaze as he quickly left the courtroom. "Can you believe this?" I whispered to my friend Linda, who sat beside me, her hand gripping mine in silent support. "It's not right, Jennifer. John deserved better," she said, her voice tight with frustration. As we exited the courthouse, reporters swarmed around, their cameras clicking, questions flying like arrows. "How do you feel about the verdict?" one asked, his microphone thrust in my direction. "This isn't the end. Justice comes in many forms, and today's decision isn't where the story concludes," I said, my voice steady, though inside I felt broken. At home, John sensed the somber mood and tried to comfort me. "It's okay, Mom, we know the truth." "Yes, we do," I said, squeezing his hand and forcing a smile, though the disappointment gnawed at me. That night, unable to sleep, I scrolled aimlessly through social media, where heated discussions about our case raged on. Some expressed outrage at the verdict, while others blamed me for the family fallout. I turned off my phone, feeling more isolated than ever, but still determined to move forward. Weeks passed, and life settled into a new rhythm. John's recovery progressed, and his resilience inspired me daily, but the shadow of the trial and my father's betrayal lingered like a dark cloud over our healing. Then one rainy evening, Linda knocked on my door, her face unusually grave. "Have you heard about your father?" "No, what happened?" I braced myself for more bad news. "There's been an accident. He was driving, still drinking, and crashed." "It's bad, Jennifer. He's in the hospital." The news hit me like a punch to the gut. Despite everything, he was still my father. A confusing mix of concern and a vindictive sense of poetic justice washed over me. I sat down, trying to process the whirlwind of emotions inside me. "Are you going to see him?" Linda asked gently. I paused, considering. "No, his path is his own now. I have to focus on what's best for John and me." Days turned into weeks, and news came that my father's injuries had left him unable to walk, his life forever altered. His financial situation had deteriorated too, with medical bills piling up, compounded by a lack of insurance due to his drinking habits. It seemed fate had delivered its own harsh verdict. "Mom, are you okay?" John's voice pulled me from my thoughts one evening as we sat watching the sunset. "I am, honey. It's just been a lot to think about. But you know what? I've realized something important through all of this." "What's that?" "That we're strong, and we can handle anything as long as we have each other. And sometimes justice isn't something you get, it's something you find within yourself." John nodded, understanding far more than any child his age should. We spent the rest of the evening talking about the future, about all the things we still wanted to do and see. It was a conversation filled with hope, not despair. In the weeks that followed, I focused on rebuilding our lives. I started a support group for parents going through similar situations, using our story to help others. The community rallied around us, their support a stark contrast to the abandonment I felt from my own family. Life had come full circle in a way I never expected. While the legal system may have failed us, life's balance hadn't. My father's fate, brought on by his own choices, was a testament to that. For John and me, every new day was a step away from past hurts and a step toward a future built on our terms, defined by our resilience and fortified by true justice, the kind that doesn't come from a courtroom, but from the strength to keep moving forward despite life's obstacles. The story of Jennifer and John has reached its conclusion, but the questions it raises still linger. What do you think of Jennifer's decision not to visit her father after his accident? Was her choice to focus solely on her and John's well-being justified, or should she have forgiven her father despite the pain he caused? Drop your thoughts in the comments below. Hey there, I'm Karen Hartley. I'm 25, living it up in the Big Apple with more money than I know what to do with. I grew up in a massive mansion upstate, but despite the luxury, it was lonely as hell. My parents, Richard and Eleanor Hartley, were always too busy jet-setting or closing deals to pay much attention to me. I was just a pawn in their game of high society chess. "Karen, darling, stand up straight. The Vanderbilts are coming for dinner," my mom would say, fussing over my dress. "But Mom, I wanted to go to Sarah's sleepover." I'd whine. "Don't be silly. Networking is far more important than some childish party," she'd reply. That was my childhood in a nutshell, always on display, never truly seen. Fast forward to now, and I'm running my own art gallery in Soho. It's my pride and joy. "This is incredible, Karen," my best friend and assistant, Mia, gushed at our latest opening. "You've really outdone yourself this time." I smiled, but even that small movement made me wince. "Thanks, Mia. I just wish I felt as good as the gallery looks." Still not feeling great. Maybe you should see a doctor, she said, frowning with concern. I waved her off. It's probably just stress. You know how it is, burning the candle at both ends. But deep down, I knew it was more than that. For months, I'd been feeling off. Fatigue that sleep couldn't fix, hair falling out in clumps, and a constant queasy feeling in my stomach. Something was wrong, but I couldn't figure out what. Karen, darling. My mother's voice cut through the gallery chatter like a knife. There you are, your father and I have been looking everywhere for you. I plastered on my best society smile. Mom, Dad, I'm so glad you could make it. My father's hand landed heavily on my shoulder. We wouldn't miss it for the world, Pumpkin. How are you feeling? I'm fine, just a bit tired. I lied, not wanting to give them the satisfaction of knowing I was struggling. Well, you must take better care of yourself, my mother tatted. Especially with your birthday coming up. Big changes ahead, you know. Right, my 26th birthday. The day I get full control of my trust fund. $50 million, all mine. No wonder my parents were suddenly so interested in my well-being. As the night wore on, the room started to spin. Voices blurred together, faces became smears of color. The last thing I remembered was Mia's panicked voice calling my name as the floor rushed up to meet me. Someone call an ambulance. And then darkness. Little did I know, this was just the beginning. My so-called perfect life was about to unravel, and the truth? Well, it was far more toxic than I could have imagined. The steady beep of a heart monitor pulled me from a foggy sleep. I blinked, trying to focus on the stark white ceiling above me. She's awake. My mother's shrill voice pierced through the haze. Doctor, come quickly. Suddenly, I was surrounded. My parents hovered like vultures, doctors poked and prodded, questions flew from all directions. How are you feeling, Miss Hartley? Can you tell us what happened? Do you remember fainting at the gallery? I groaned, overwhelmed. Can everyone just give me a minute? The room cleared, leaving only my parents and one persistent doctor. Sweetheart, we've been so worried, my father said, his voice dripping with concern that felt oddly out of place. I narrowed my eyes. How long have I been here? 3 days, the doctor chimed in. We've run a battery of tests, but so far, everything's inconclusive. Great, just great. Days blurred together. More tests, more questions, but still no answers. My parents were constantly at my bedside, fussing over me in a way they never had before. It was unsettling. Mia visited whenever she could, bringing updates from the gallery and a much-needed sense of normalcy. Don't you think it's weird? She whispered one day, glancing at my parents, who were chatting with a nurse outside. They've never been this attentive before. I shrugged. Maybe they're just worried. But Mia's words planted a seed of doubt. It wasn't until a week into my hospital stay that things took a turn. A new doctor breezed into my room with an air of confidence and piercing blue eyes. Miss Hartley, I'm Dr. Alex Foster. I specialize in toxicology, and I'd like to run a few additional tests. Something about his demeanor made me sit up straighter. Toxicology? You think I've been poisoned? He smiled enigmatically. Let's not jump to conclusions. I just want to cover all our bases. As he left, a memory hit me like a truck. My 18th birthday, the day I gained partial access to my trust fund. You're an adult now, Karen, my father had said, champagne in hand. But remember, the bulk of your inheritance is still locked up tight until you're 26, for your own good, of course. I'd been so naive then, so trusting. But now? I called Mia the moment I was alone. I need you to do something for me. It's unconventional. Anything, she replied without hesitation. I want you to hire a private investigator to look into my parents' finances. There was a pause. Karen, are you sure? I've never been more sure of anything in my life. The next few days were a whirlwind. Dr. Foster ran his tests, and Mia reported back with alarming findings from the PI. Mounting debts, failed investments, my parents teetering on the edge of financial ruin. And then the bombshell. I found these in your apartment, Maya said, holding up a bag of pills. They were hidden in your vitamin bottle, Karen. They're not vitamins. My blood ran cold. Just then, Dr. Foster walked in, his face grim. Miss Hartley, I have your test results. I'm afraid it's not good news. I steel myself, already suspecting what you was about to say. You've been subjected to long-term arsenic poisoning, Someone has been slowly killing you. The world stopped. Everything clicked into place. The sudden attentiveness, the financial troubles, my upcoming birthday, and full access to the trust fund. My own parents have been poisoning me. We need to be smart, Dr. Foster whispered, his eyes darting to the door. If they suspect we're onto them. I nodded, a lump forming in my throat. What's our next move? Over the next few weeks, we gathered evidence like spies in our own twisted family drama. Jake, our private investigator, delivered the final blow one rainy afternoon. There's a life insurance policy, he said, his voice heavy. If you died before your 26th birthday, they hit the jackpot. I felt the walls closing in. Every memory, every interaction with my parents was now tainted with suspicion. It was time for the final act. The family dinner was set. My parents arrived, all concerned looks and gentle touches. Karen, darling, my mother cooed, adjusting my pillows. You really should eat more. You're wasting away. I forced a weak smile. It's hard to keep anything down these days. My father patted my hand. Now. Positive thinking, remember? You'll bounce back in no time. I took a deep breath, steeling myself. Actually, I wanted to talk to you both about after. After what, sweetheart? My mother asked, her voice unnaturally high. After I'm gone, I said softly. The doctors say, well, you know. The room fell silent. I could almost hear their hearts racing. I've been thinking about the trust fund, I continued, and your financial situation. My father's grip on his fork tightened. Karen, you shouldn't worry about such things. But I do, I pressed. I want to know you'll be okay, that it will all be worth it. Worth what? My mother asked sharply. I met her gaze. The tea, the special vitamins, all your efforts. The color drained from their faces. My father recovered first, his lawyer instincts kicking in. I'm not sure what you're implying, he said stiffly. We've only ever wanted what's best for you. Like the life insurance policy I didn't know about. I countered. My mother's hand flew to her throat. How did you? It doesn't matter. I cut her off. What matters is why. Why would you do this to your own daughter? The facade crumbled. My mother's eyes filled with tears, but not of remorse, of frustration. You don't understand, she hissed. We had no choice. The debts, the lifestyle we built. We did it for you, my father interjected, his voice tight, to secure your future. I laughed bitterly. By ending it? It wasn't supposed to be like this, my mother wailed. It was just supposed to make you sick enough to what? I spat. Sign everything over to you. Die conveniently before my birthday. My father stood abruptly. This conversation is over. You're clearly not in your right mind. Oh, I'm in my right mind for the first time in years, I said, my voice steady. And so are the police officers listening. The door burst open as the officers read them their rights. My parents' faces contorted with a mix of shock, anger, and finally, defeat. Karen, my mother pleaded as they were led away. We're your parents. We love you. I looked at her, this woman who had traded maternal love for greed. No, I said quietly. You don't know the meaning of the word. As the door closed behind them, I felt a weight lift off my chest, but in its place was a hollow ache, a void where my family used to be. As I focused on my recovery, the media exploded with the scandal. Headlines screamed, socialite parents poison Harris' daughter. It was surreal watching my family's dirty laundry aired for all to see. Months passed. I threw myself into my work, expanding the gallery and exploring new artistic ventures. On my 26th birthday, I gained full control of my trust fund. It felt bittersweet. To new beginnings. Mia raised her glass with a smile. To new beginnings, she toasted. And to true family, I added, clinking my glass against hers. Mia, I said, turning to her, how would you feel about becoming my business partner? Her eyes widened in surprise. Are you serious? Dead serious, I grinned. I couldn't have gotten through this without you, and you're brilliant at what you do. She hugged me tightly. I'd be honored. As we pulled apart, I caught sight of Dr. Foster, Alex, across the room. He smiled and made his way over. Congratulations, Karen, he said warmly. How does it feel to be 26? Better than I ever imagined, I replied, suddenly aware of how close we were standing. Our relationship had grown over the past months, shifting from doctor-patient to something more. A few days later, Mia burst into my office, tablet in hand. "Saf, you need to see this," she exclaimed, pulling up a news article. The headline read, "Disgraced lawyer Richard Hartley scammed in prison. Loses hidden assets." I skimmed the article, emotions swirling inside me. "Karma, I guess," I murmured. "There's more," Maya said, swiping to another article. "Eleanor Hartley sentenced to 15 years for attempted murder of Harris' daughter." I sat back, processing. I should feel happy about this, right? Vindicated. Mia squeezed my shoulder. "You can feel however you want to feel, Sophie." Months turned into years. My business thrived and my relationship with Alex deepened, but there was still one loose end to tie up. The prison visiting room was cold and sterile. My parents sat across from me, looking older and defeated. "Karen," my mother breathed, her voice shaking. "We're so sorry. Can you ever forgive us?" I looked at them, these strangers who shared my blood. "I'm not here for your apology," I said calmly. "I'm here to say goodbye." "But we're your parents," my father protested weakly. I stood, my voice steady. "No, you're not. You lost that right when you decided your greed was more important than my life." "Please," my mother sobbed. "We love you. Love isn't supposed to hurt like this. Goodbye." As I walked out of the prison, I felt lighter. The last chains of my past had finally broken. Ahead of me stretched a future full of possibility, built on my terms with people who truly cared. I took a deep breath of fresh air. For the first time in my life, I was truly free. The story has come to an end. Now I have a question for you. If you were in my shoes, could you ever forgive parents who tried to murder you for money? Or is some betrayal too deep for forgiveness? Share your thoughts in the comments below.